So tonight's session is all about exercise for working life, fitting your exercises and activities in around your job, whether that's something more sedentary or something much more active. My name is Zoe Clark. I'm Senior Self-Management Programme Officer here at NASS, and happy to share with you today. So firstly, just a very brief overview is that the benefits of exercise for axial SpA, because most of us would have been told many times by a healthcare professional how important axial SpA exercise for axial SpA is. But it can be quite overwhelming to begin with. It can be really difficult to know where to get started. And if you're already doing a lot of activity, it can be really difficult to know whether you're meant to add to that, whether you're meant to change it. And particularly for those in really active jobs, where actually fatigue can be a really difficult thing to be managing, it can be really hard to know exactly where to get started. So I'm hopefully going to share a few tips around that this evening. I think to begin with, it can be really good to actually switch our thinking a little bit. So I'm a healthcare professional as well as having AS. So sometimes I slip into using the terminology of exercise and exercising, when actually we can really think about it in terms of activity, not necessarily exercise, because we may not have time to fit in specific exercises, but it might be that our general day-to-day activities are actually helping our condition as well. So it might be that you don't need to add in as much as you think, you need to adapt things, or you may already be doing a lot of activities that help your axial SpA naturally. And I speak to lots of people on the helpline and through my work at NASS who have axial SpA and find it really difficult to fit the right activities in around their working life. So I'm going to break it down into a few sections tonight. So firstly, what activities are important with axial SpA? So when you look at your week and your activity levels, it's really important to have a combination of all of these different things. Ideally, we'd get something of everything in each day, but it can be difficult to do that. So if you think about it as a week to begin with, that can be a little bit less overwhelming. We want to ensure that we make sure we get a little bit of flexibility work or stretching in our day-to-day routine, and particularly through the week as well. That could be something as easy as doing some gentle seated stretches. It could be just going for a walk. It could even be things like around the house, like doing housework or reaching for things in cupboards, things like that. That's all going to work on our flexibility and strength and stretching. The strengthening work comes in when we add a little bit of weight to that. So if we can do some strengthening work each day, that can be really beneficial. But again, it could be those day-to-day activities. It could be going and doing your food shopping, so lifting the bag, pushing the trolley around, things like that. That's all going to be really strengthening. Some amount of cardio work per week is really helpful. So that's any kind of activity that gets your heart rate up. So it could be going for a brisk walk. You could go to the gym and actually use machines to help with that. Swimming, things like that can be really helpful. And with axial SpA, some people do find that over time they can get postural changes, whether that's because of the condition itself or because of tightening of muscles, particularly through the shoulders and the neck. So doing some kind of work and activity to look after our posture can be really helpful. And I'll share some links to a previous video we did on doing a posture check, which you can incorporate each day if that would be helpful. And weight-bearing exercise is really important for our bone health. So any kind of activity where you're weight-bearing, whether that be walking, jogging, or using some kind of resistance weights, is all really helpful for promoting healthy bones. And then finally, any activity that works on balance, because it's really important, particularly as we get older, to ensure that our balance is as good as we can get it, so that it reduces the risk of falls and therefore injuries. Now with balance, my favourite thing to do is just when I'm waiting for the kettle to boil or when I'm waiting for the toaster to go, then I just do a few balance exercises in the kitchen, and it's perfect because you're there with the counter next to you, so you can use that for support if you need to, so you're nice and safe. But you can do things like standing on one leg, you can do that, or going up onto your tiptoes, things like that. You can incorporate those in quite easily, and that helps you just incorporate that activity through the day without it being something big to fit in around work. With these exercises, I'll share a link to a previous video we have with Heather, a physiotherapist. She went through some really great exercises, so hopefully you can fit that in through your day. Now, as I mentioned, when we're looking at activities for axial SpA, it's really helpful to look at your day and your week and look at what activities you're actually already doing. Particularly if you're in a very physical job, you may find that you need to do less sort of higher intensity activities, so things like where you're getting your heart rate up. You might already be doing that, whereas you might not be doing so much of the stretches and the postural work. And the other way around, if you're sitting at a desk a lot, It might be that you need to do more of that higher intensity exercise and activity where you're getting your heart rates up, and a bit more on the flexibility work as well. So I'm going to split it first into the more seated work and then into the more active work. So if you find that you spend a lot of your time sat at a desk or a lot of time driving, as I mentioned just now, it may be that you don't get much cardio in through the day. A lot of people as well, if you sit for a long period of time, particularly if you get engrossed in your work and aren't able to take many breaks, that can increase those postural changes that we get where the shoulders come forward and the head comes forward, which can contribute to the amount of pain we feel in the back and in the neck. And lots of people who spend time seated with axial SpA do find that their joint stiffness and their pain from being less active increases as well. So there are a few different opportunities that you can fit more activity in around your work when you're working from a desk. So looking at things like your commutes, how you're getting to and from work, are there ways that you can put some more activity into those times? Lunchtime is a really helpful time, particularly for the joint stiffness and pain. It's really important to get up and move around to make sure that you're loosening the joints and reducing that pain building up. And it's really important to take breaks through the day as well. I've shared a link towards the end of the slides, which I'll put in the comments, and that shares our guide for employers, because it's really important for you to be able to have breaks through your day. And with Axial SpA, most people are covered by the Equality Act in the UK. So it means that if your employer is aware of the condition, they should be able to then put in reasonable accommodations, such as allowing you to take breaks for stretching and moving, to make sure that you're looking after your condition as much as you can. And of course, after work is a really great opportunity to get in more of that higher intensity activity and get the cardio in. Some little hacks that you can perhaps bring in through your day. You may want to consider getting a sit to stand desk. So lots of people with Axial SpA find that they wouldn't want a standing desk all the time, because then that can contribute to more of their hip and low back pain. You can get desks which switch quite easily between sitting and standing, and you can use that then to make sure that you get some time standing, or you can do some standing stretches, you can march on the spot, that sort of thing, and then you can spend some time sitting, and that's going to look after your energy levels as well. Walking meetings can be a really good way now that lots of people are back in the office. Taking meetings when you're walking or meeting in a different location, so you have a bit more activity to get to it. And these Swiss balls, so I pictured here, can be really great for sitting on when you're working, because if you're like me, you'll probably fidget around on them, because you can kind of shift your balance, you can shift your weight. So you're getting a little bit of movement into the joints, reducing that joint stiffness and pain building up, working on your balance a little bit as well. And naturally, when you sit well on them, that's going to help with your posture as well. They can be really great addition. And you may find that you'd like to start by using this for short periods of time, because it does really engage your muscles, so it can be a little bit more tiring to begin with. You can switch between that and a chair through the day, so you get those rest breaks as well. And I do know of some people who, instead of using the Swiss ball, they've found I think they're called wobble boards, where they go on the base of your seat, so you're sitting on them, so you can still use the chair, but you've got the same effect where you're able to shift your weight from one side to the other. You're able to keep doing those movements and work on your balance while working. And that age-old tip, if you're able to use the stairs, then taking the stairs instead of the lift, just looking at those little ways that we can bring a bit more movement into the day when you are working at a desk or you're driving. And we've got a few videos which I'll link to at the end of the session, which go through some good exercises as well. So ideal activities, so sitting or standing stretches are perfect, because, as I said, as that joint stiffness builds up, the pain can build up as well. And the stretches can also help reduce any postural changes. So you want to really particularly focus on the front of the shoulders, front of the hips, and then strengthening through the back as well. Walking is a really great exercise. So if you can do that in the middle of the day, for example, I used to be in a very physical job, but I do now work at a desk, and I try and get out every lunchtime if the weather's okay. If not, I'll make sure that I potter about the house a little bit, because the temptation very much working from home is to just quickly grab lunch, sit back at my desk, and then realise that I'm in a lot of pain because I've not moved all day. So I try and practice what I preach. So walking is a really great one to get in through the day when you're spending a lot of time seated. Yoga is a lovely way to stretch and get moving. You may have seen our posts recently about Stretch September. And from tomorrow, Yoga for AS are running some wonderful sessions to help you get stretching more through September. So it might be a good opportunity to try and incorporate that a little bit more. Strengthening work and Pilates are really excellent to incorporate. So they'd be potentially more things that you do perhaps after work or on the weekend, so you can do those stronger classes. Swimming is an excellent all-body workout. It can work on strengthening your muscles, stretching your joints, increasing your flexibility, but also getting your heart rate up as well. So if you can fit in a swimming session once or twice a week, that's a lovely addition. And also because you're in water and taking the pressure off the joints, it can be a lot more comfortable, particularly if you're just getting back into more activity and more movement after, say, a flare or when you're first diagnosed. It can be difficult to really get started without causing more pain. Tai Chi, cardio and dancing are all lovely, again, full body exercises, but they're working on your balance a little bit more, as well as getting your heart rate up and getting that weight bearing exercise, which is helpful for your bones, as I mentioned earlier. And then finally, the posture check, I'll link to that at the end of the session as well. So that's a lovely 5-minute posture check you can do at the beginning and end of the day, just to help undo some of those, the effects of sitting when you're either at a desk or when you're driving. Now, moving on to a more active or manual job, there are some common effects from being in one of these types of jobs. So often it involves lots of repetitive movements, potentially straining body areas. You may well be using certain areas of your body more than others through the day. And lots of people with active jobs do really struggle with their fatigue or their energy levels. With Axial SpA, naturally you can get a lot of fatigue. So then when you add in working in such an active and manual job, that can really compound it. And sometimes it involves lots of standing or lots of walking, which can be a strain on the joints for some people. And it could potentially involve heavy lifting as well, which when done safely can be okay. But again, it's when it gets into those repetitive movements, particularly with Axial SpA, you might find then you get more pain in those areas. So firstly, some opportunities of where you can add in a bit more movement or a bit more activity. So before work, depending on when you start work, before work can be a really good time to help with this. Lunchtime is good as well. Again, just making sure that your employer is aware of your condition, giving them advice for employers to really understand that you need to have your lunchtime, you need to have your breaks, you may need to rest or do different activities, but making sure that they know your rights for those adjustments for your condition. After work is a really good time to be doing any different activities, perhaps stretches, and also remembering that time before bed as well, helping you to unwind. So some hacks that you can bring in if you are in that more active or manual job. So as I mentioned, having those breaks where you can stretch can be really helpful. So do you think about the areas that you're working a lot with work? It might be that you want to stretch those out, particularly if you're doing a lot of lifting, you might want to stretch your back, your arms, and your hips as well. And then thinking about the types of movements that you're doing repetitively and what areas of your body you're working, trying to make sure that you're mixing up the tasks that you do as much as possible. So, for example, if you have an area that means you're using your upper body a lot, and some tasks where you're using your lower body a lot, are you able to mix up those tasks? You do one task for a short period of time and then you switch, so you're able to reduce the effects in one area. And again, with that fatigue from being in an active job, it's important to recognise that it's okay to rest when you get home, and you don't necessarily have to get home and immediately start doing stretches and activity and different things. It can actually be much more beneficial to get home, have a rest, even have a nap, try and regain some of your energy levels, and then you can perhaps do those stretches or different activities when you're feeling more up to it. And do look at other tools and aids and supports that are out there to help with manual and repetitive work. For example, using a sack barrier when you're lifting. There are lots of different things out there that can be really helpful. And if you do have any particularly troublesome area, speaking to someone like an occupational therapist or a physiotherapist about potentially getting some kind of joint support, just to help support the joints when you're doing that kind of repetitive movement. There's some lovely activities that you can incorporate if you are in a really active and manual job. Stretching and yoga can be really helpful, and they're great both for the physical effects, but also for relaxation as well. And as I mentioned, when you're thinking about the areas that you're working a lot when you're working, it might be that you're strengthening some areas of your body, but not strengthening others as much. So when you're looking at then adding in some strengthening exercises, try and focus on the areas that you're not already working. And I'll link to this video, the 6 p.m. stretch. I'll put a still from the video here. This is a really lovely stretch that you can do lying down in bed. So I suggest this to people who get a lot of fatigue. If they get in from their day and they've got a lot of fatigue, then 6 stretch is lovely. So you can do really gentle stretches, but lying down in bed, so you're resting. And it's a really nice way to kind of unwind from work and then start your evening as well. You can also use this first thing in the morning if you find that you get a lot of joint stiffness and pain and it's difficult to get out of bed. Doing this stretch before even getting up can be a really good way of just loosening things up and making things more comfortable. Again, the posture check is really helpful, particularly if you spend lots of time sort of leaning down, particularly with things like gardening, doing a lot of digging, things like that, and making sure you do that posture check, ideally morning and evening, but even just a couple of times a week can be helpful, just to help check in and make sure you're looking after your posture. And always worth mentioning again, resting is needed as well, because sometimes it can be difficult too. So I think it's always good to have that reminder to rest when you need to. There is lots of support available, so it's well worth, if you are struggling with work, if you're struggling with getting any accommodations, or if you find that work is really affecting your pain as well, you can ask your GP or rheumatologist to refer to an occupational therapist, and they can give advice on things like joint supports, any ways you can adapt using your body, and things like that. Access to work is available for people who are employed and self-employed, and it helps to pay for any kind of modifications that may be needed to help you with working. And of course, physiotherapists are excellent at giving advice on keeping active and adding exercises into your day. So you can ask for a referral from your GP or your rheumatologist. And it's really important to chat to them about what you're already doing through your working life, because then they'll be able to give you some more tailored exercises that will suit you, that are going to target the areas that you're not already covering. And finally, these are some of the links that I referred to as I was chatting. So we've got the guide for employers on the second one there, and also a guide to working with Axial SpA, which can be really helpful for you, but also you may want to give to colleagues as well so they can understand more about your condition. And I'm sharing a link to our previous video on creating an exercise routine and setting goals. So that goes into a little bit more detail on specific exercises and targeting different benefits as well. And then finally, a video we did on working with Axial SpA as well, if you want to go a little bit more in depth in terms of adaptations and things like that. And the other links that I mentioned, I'll add them to the slides, and I'll put the slides in the comments tomorrow morning as well. So do come back to see those. So I'm going to stop sharing my slides now and be able to take your questions. I've seen a couple popping up as I'm chatting. So stop sharing there. Perfect. Let's have a look. Oh, sorry to hear that, Rika. So Rika shared that they have AS and have been in lots of pain and nobody's helped since 2000. So I'm really sorry to hear that. I hope the video today has been helpful. Do pop onto our website, particularly onto, I'll pop the link in the comments afterwards, but we have a relatively new section called Your Space, and that talks about managing your pain, your flares and your fatigue. And it can be really helpful. We've got some short videos giving snippets of advice, and also Wendy and Ben sharing their experiences, which can be really helpful to hear from other people who've been in a similar situation as well. You can also then sign up to our Your Space meetups. You're very welcome to come along to those, so you can meet other people with the condition and you can hear from them, get some advice on how to manage it. And also we've got our helpline as well, so you're very welcome to give us an email or give us a call if you'd like to chat to someone one-to-one as well. We're definitely not alone, so please do get in contact and hopefully we can help. Let's see, and Maya shared, I love the Swiss ball idea, but actually making it work with the desk is so hard, and it's always too low down. Any suggestions? That can be really difficult. Yeah, it depends on kind of your setup already. I would say for that situation, then probably the wobble board that sits on top of the seat is better if you've got a seat that adjusts. So when you add the wobble board on top, you can just lower your seat down slightly so you're still the right height. So otherwise it can be difficult. Also, I will share, we had a previous Tai Chi video where Susie, the physiotherapist, went into detail on getting a Swiss ball that is the right size for you, because it's really common that people get a Swiss ball that's a little bit too small for them, so it's lower. So it may well be, it'll be worth just checking based on your height, whether you're on the correct size board as well. That'd be worth checking, because it should be quite similar when you're sat on a chair at a desk with your feet planted on the floor. That should be the kind of similar setup as when you're on a Swiss ball, so it might be that needs to be a little bit higher as well. So I'll remember to share that in response to your comment as well, Maya. Yeah, so I think that's all the questions so far. Hopefully my phone is showing all of them. But please do keep adding the questions. I've got a little bit of time still to answer any more questions from you all. And if you're watching on catch up, I'll keep an eye out in the comments over the next few days. And you're always welcome to drop me an email, zoe@nass.co.uk, if you're watching this later on catch up, where I'm not monitoring the comments as much. So do feel free to send any questions that way as well. Lovely. So I'm just going to double check when our next session is. Yeah, our next session is going to be on Monday, the 11th of September at 10:30 a.m. We'll have a Facebook Live with the NASS online branch, and we're going to be doing a live Pilates session. So I hope that everyone can come and join us for that. As always, it will be recorded and will stay on our Facebook page and go onto our YouTube page as well. So if you can't join us live, you can always do it in your lunch break or after work or it's weekend as well when you've got a bit more time. Lovely. So I can't see any more comments coming through at the moment, any more questions. As I said, please do pop them in there and I'll keep an eye on those and I'll come back to them. And yeah, thank you everyone for joining. It's been lovely to chat, and hopefully see you on Monday the 11th for Pilates. Take care, everyone.